One of the highlights of the book, I think, is where I'm kind of talking about agency ICE, how it's been handcuffed. The ERO, they are not allowed to arrest and criminal aliens with removal orders. In most of the country, when law enforcement has one of these guys in jail, they won't let them contact ICE afterwards.
Welcome back, Blue Grit family. Man, it's been a
long time.
It's been a long time. Yeah. Before we dive off into this, you guys hit that subscribe button and be sure to download us on the podcast platforms, because it's kind of how we get measured on our success. I know that we think we're successful, but we've all got bosses, and we'd love to take the analytics back to them and show them what we're doing. So hit the subscribe button on your YouTube channels, you watchers out there in the podcast platforms. Man, we've got a special guest on today. This is Tyler Owen and Clint McNair. We're in the house.
Hey.
Todd Bensman. We kind of discussed his title a while ago, and I'm not that intelligent, because obviously I'm here with Clint, and so I'm not even going to attempt to give you your title. So if you want to kind of explain who your employer is, you've got a really, really interesting story, and just like Clint was saying, we try to give good content, good episodes, and I think you are definitely going to live up to that par.
All right. So, Todd Bensman, my title is Senior National Security Fellow for the Center for Immigration Studies, and it's a think tank, a policy think tank out of Washington, D.C., but okay. I stay here in Texas.
Thank God.
And a fellow in your role is to provide them accurate, unfiltered, real-time.
I mean, what we do is we produce education policy papers, information that lawmakers and the public can use to kind of be educated about our issue, which is immigration of all sorts, but especially now with this mass migration crisis, we're spending a lot of time on the border and looking into the causes and implications and impacts of the whole thing.
Oh, wow. So your reports essentially would go to the U.S. Senate, U.S. congressmen, and give the reports to them?
Yeah, we're always briefing those guys. We're on the Hill. It's a D.C. think tank, so, it's an inside the Beltway. A lot of it's inside the Beltway, but, we've got a website, cis.org. Anybody who's interested in this topic can go there. Most think tanks, policy think tanks, are on the sort of open borders, kind of liberal side, and ours is like one of the very, very few that's our moniker is pro-migrant, low immigration.
Okay. Now, is this government funded or is this privately funded?
We're nonpartisan, independently funded by donors and foundations. And
nice.
That's cool. That's cool.
We'll take your donation afterwards.
Yeah. My salary's not that good, I promise you. But I guess before we dive off into kind of, why we're here, give us kind of a background of who Todd is and where you grew up at, and kind of what your career started as. And
Sure. So I'm going to give up my age here by having all these years of stuff going on, but I, born in Houston, raised in Phoenix.
Okay.
Came back as soon as I could.
Yep.
Classically trained journalist background. I am a recovering reporter. I did, my undergrad was in journalism, and then I got one of my masters is in journalism too. And then I worked in the field for 23 years through 2009 for, newspapers mostly. Big newspapers, 10 years at the Dallas Morning News on staff, CBS and Hearst News through 2009. So I had a full good career doing all kinds of great stuff down there on the border and everywhere. National security, covered the Dallas Police Department for years and years. And then in 2009, I was recruited. I was doing a lot of border stuff, and one of my sources at that time was Steve McGraw, who's now the current director.
Pretty good source to have, I'd say.
Well, this was before he was a big deal like that.
Yeah.
So But so, and he was reading me, and he was real familiar with my work down on the border. And so then when I think he was appointed in July of 2009, and in August, he recruited me in. He says he's going to rebuild his intelligence division. They're looking for unconventional backgrounds, right?
Yeah.
So he says, you interested? I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, what am I going to do? And he says, well, how about terrorism? I'm like, hell yeah.
That's cool.
So anyway, I get onboarded, and, he's like, can you pass a background check, that kind of thing? And can you pass a security clearance stuff? And I was like, yeah, no problem. I'm clean. So after all of that, I'm onboarded, and I want to say within 2 weeks was the Fort Hood massacre.
Nadir
2
Susan.
weeks. So, I didn't really know how to be an intelligence analyst or an law enforcement guy.
Yeah.
So I just went, the Rangers, we set up this whole, CP, and I'm like, I'll show these guys. So within a few minutes, I had the name of the shooter, and I figured out who his imam was.
Oh,
So
wow.
I called the imam in Killeen, get him on he's a doctor. I'm like, this is Todd Bensman. I'm with Texas DPS. I need to have him on the phone here ASAP. And like next thing I know, I had him on, and all this great intel pouring through. I go to the Rangers with my report, and I'm like, yeah, here's what you need to do. You got this guy, that guy. He knows all the people on the phones and that. So they dispatch a couple of cops to go get this guy. And next thing I know is I'm being hauled into the office. Who the hell is this Todd Bensman guy? What the hell is going on? Call those cops back. This is FBI. So he's tampering with a witness. He doesn't know. He's not. So apparently you're not supposed to, I didn't know.
Right.
I was being a journalist in an intelligence role and untrained. But my boss at the time's a Navy SEAL, came up to me afterwards, and he's like, hey man, don't worry about it. Better to beg better to beg for permission beg for forgiveness than to ask permission.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely right.
So I knew I was in the right place, and I stayed there for 9 years over there here at Austin. That's how I got to Austin. I'm still here.
So the colonel recruited you away. That's really cool, and he was wanting unconventional backgrounds.
Yes.
A lot of times we can get tunnel visioned on things, or cops are very similar. I guess he was looking for someone that looked at things through a different lens or a perspective, or look at things from a different background, I suppose.
Yeah, and I had been covering national security issues since 9/11, because I was covering my job on 9/11 for the Dallas Morning News was the FBI, and I'd been covering law enforcement for years already, and so a lot of people don't know, but the center of gravity for that investigation was Dallas, Texas, because of American Airlines is based there, and all the planes
And
were
Southwest.
American Airlines.
Yeah, many other.
So the FBI office that I covered mostly was like sucked into this whole thing, and so from that point on, I was covering terrorism. They were rolling dudes up. They were doing closing mosques. They were doing prosecutions. The immigration guys were hauling guys into. They were really rounding up. There were a lot of bad guys in Dallas. I'll just tell you at that time, and I just never quit doing terrorism coverage, and came down to the border and started doing terrorism coverage at the border, and that's what kind of caught their attention.
Well, in Dallas, for whatever reason, the Fountain Place Plaza.
Oh yeah, 2010.
2010, they were going to destroy the tall, for our listeners, the tall green building in Dallas that kind of goes up and makes a peak. It's beautiful, usually a green color at
It's
night.
got the green outline on it.
Yeah, there was a plot in 2010 to bring that to the ground through a bombing, much like the first attempt at the World Trade Center. For whatever reason, Dallas has been. There was another guy in Lubbock that was going to attack George W. There in Dallas. For whatever reason, Dallas, I guess, is a hotbed
We've
for.
had all kinds of stuff here in Texas, believe me, and we still do. Houston, Dallas, Austin, everybody's got them.
Daily.
I mean, it's not just them either. So, I was doing counterterrorism. They let me form a counterterrorism unit that had, I think we had maybe 12 people, analysts in that thing. We're all civilians, but we're overseen by commissioned guys. So, for 9 years, we were doing great work with the FBI and ICE and every police department in the state, county governments, county sheriffs, marshals. We had a fusion center, which is right over here. And we had 15 different federal agencies in there. So
Wow.
We were for counterterrorism, we were the group that brought in our terrorism related material to the feds and vice versa. And we had a lot. We had our own proprietary intelligence database that had lots of stuff in it that everybody wanted. So we were the guys that did that.
So journalists are kind of fact finders and diggers, and cops are fact. Was that a pretty natural trend, or was it really weird and took some time to?
You would be surprised. I mean, it's different. There's a lot to learn about it. There's chain of custody issues, and there's all sorts of copy things that when you first join up, I'd been covering police and prosecution for years, so I wasn't a complete newbie. But when you're on the inside of investigations and the inside of cases, and there's wiretap stuff going on.
How soon after you became integrated with DPS did you say, oh shit, a couple of years ago I probably would have rethought how I wrote that report or covered that story? Did it change did it alter your mind?
Oh God, yeah. And there were so many. I'll just tell you. I mean, the first thing I did when I got my security clearance, there were stories that I had done, that I had written for years. I went right in there and just dug it all up, and I was like, oh, that's what the thing was. Oh my God, look at that.
That's cool.
I couldn't do anything with it. But, But I mean, I got access to like the real deal behind the scenes stuff.
That's cool. Yeah. And probably a really unique. I've not heard of a lot of people transitioning from journalism to a role like that.
It occasionally, it's a really good match, really. I mean, if you have journalism skills, they translate really well to intelligence collection and analysis.
Well, the fact is too, I mean, the journalists are nosy. People who are in media are nosy. And that's what makes a badass cop is the fact we're nosy.
That's right.
An awesome cop, they have to be nosy in order to do their job.
Relentless in digging up.
Absolutely.
Facts.
And so that one trait probably mirrors each other, and that's probably why they complement each other.
Yeah. I mean, it really is I'm surprised there aren't a lot more journalists doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, journalists make great intel people.
Yeah. Well, but you may not know this. I'm a bit younger than like Clint was. Clint worked at Garland PD. I worked in East Texas, and the perception of younger law enforcement is that the media is the devil and journalists are the devil because of the ongoing situations that are going on across the country. And so, if you can use those resources just as McGraw did to you, and have good contacts with the media and trust those contacts, that's what makes a good marriage. Yeah. That's what makes good friendships.
Well, and then he must have seen something in me. I was a friendly. I wasn't one of those guys out like to burn cops. I like cops.
Right.
I like what they do. Always did, and he must have seen that I was like one of the, kind of like already,
trustworthy. Yeah.
I never burned them. I never burned anyone, and I certainly wasn't going after police departments like they do now.
Yeah. Right. So 9 years in DPS.
Yeah.
All in the intelligence unit, all at the Fusion Center, and terrorism and border issues.
Mostly terrorism, but we did a lot of border stuff. My unit we had people coming over the border from the Middle East. So Iraq, Syria, Iran, we had guys coming in from every terror country on the planet coming over the border, and quite a few of them were true blue bad guys. And the governor always wanted to know like who was coming over, and there were the ledge guys always wanted to know who was coming over. And So we started to dig into that, and I'd done that work as a journalist. I did a whole series of stories down there about Iraqis and Pakistanis and Somalis all coming over the southern border, and that it was in the context of it as a national security threat. Who are these guys?
Yeah.
And what do we do about it? And when I got over to Intel, we did that. We worked that. And in everything that I thought that I had reported publicly about all that was like completely true. And, you know, they were calling me a crazy, like that my stuff was crazy. Arabs, terrorists crossing the border. This guy's full of it. No, I wasn't. And when I found that out as soon as I got to the other side.
Yeah.
And we did a lot of programs. For example, one thing I noticed was that ICE Intel, they're supposed to, and the FBI, they're supposed to interview they call them special interest aliens, the guys that are coming from 35 designated countries. If they cross in, they're called an SIA. They get a little stamp on the forehead that nobody can see, where the FBI or ICE Intel or somebody from the feds are supposed to go down and like do a face-on-face, eyeball-to-eyeball interview. Who the hell are you? But I realized that they were doing about maybe a third, 30% of them. So I stood up a program where I trained all my guys to do interviews, put them through training, got our best polygraph guys, and we went through training, and then we collected that intel. So we'd go down into the ICE detention facilities, all of them, from El Paso to Isabel. Every week we were down there collecting the intel before they could bond out and disappear, right?
Right.
And then we would share that with all of our partners. So my unit was very involved in that stuff. And sometimes there'd be a report on Fox or somewhere like terrorists cross the border, and you know, in the middle of the night, I'm getting a call from the big boss. He's like, yeah, the governor wants to know about this, like right now. Who is that? Is that a true thing? Is that true? Most of the time it wasn't, but sometimes it was.
Well, I think it's super important. We have a lot of people, non-law enforcement, that watch and listen to the show, and I think it's super important that people in general, you know, my sweet mom lives in a bubble and thinks most people in the world are good, and in her mind, probably immigration is Hispanic people from Mexico coming over for a better life or coming over to work in the fields and do things like that. And it's super important for people to understand there is that going on. But
Yes.
it's one of the terms is OTMs, other than Mexico people coming over. People from Syria and Iraq are not coming over here to pick watermelons in the fields and work in the crops and you know, trying to look for a farming lifestyle, or that's not why those people are. And so the immigration oftentimes gets perverted into something that it's not. It's not about the people coming over here trying to do better. It's the mechanism to control so we don't have terrorists coming across or people with ill will. Something you care to share on that? I mean, is it how important that is?
Right. I mean, first of all, it's important to make the distinction between legal and illegal immigration. It's not all just immigration, and I think that happens too much. What's happening at the border is illegal immigration. And the problem with illegal immigration is that most everybody coming over is a stranger until we meet them.
Right.
And then even when we meet them, they're a stranger. And if you're looking at this from a law enforcement, like from a public protection, public safety standpoint, like I think all three of us do,
Right.
that's a major problem. I want to know who's coming in. I want to know what their history was. Did they rape somebody back in the homeland? Did they murder a bunch of villagers somewhere? I mean, are they a terrorist that they were killing our troops over there and now they're coming over here mad at us? And I think that's natural. Like there's nothing xenophobic or racist about that. It's protection. And
if you go to any other country in the world,
yeah, they've had
there
a
are
process.
mechanisms and controls in place to understand who they're accepting into their country, and that's acceptable. You have a right to know who's coming to your house.
Yeah,
exactly. So that's kind of how I come at that issue. Are most of them probably just coming in here to work and make money and send home? Probably. The issue is that you have in this mass migration crisis, which is the greatest in U.S. history. We have never had this many people ever in U.S. history, even all the way back to Ellis Island. This is the greatest mass migration crisis we've ever experienced.
What's the time period for a reference of you're saying this is the greatest mass migration? Last 6 months, 20 months, 5 years?
Well, in the book, I report that it literally started on Inauguration Day, January 20th, 2021. I can trace it.
Wow.
To that day. They poured in by the hundreds of thousands on that day.
There had been rumors prior, whenever Biden was a part of the Obama administration. Again, we're not going to get into politics. I'm not going to tell you if I'm Republican, Democrat, Independent. It's really irrelevant. However,
he's not old enough to vote.
Yeah, I just bet. Yeah, okay. But it was rumored that during Obama's presidency, there was almost advertisements going on in South America where it was inviting immigrants to come up and cross. Was that ever vetted? Did you ever hear about that?
Yeah, I was there. I was in the Intel Center when all of it was going on.
So that was true.
Totally true. They were.
Wow.
They had billboards.
So do you think
CNN was running news stories explaining in Spanish exactly how you can get in?
So let's just call a spade, and as this says, and again, we're not talking about really politics, but you got to wonder if a certain man in office is a part of a Democratic Party, and that's his message. And I'm not saying that I'm pro-Trump or anti-Trump or nothing, but now that Biden comes in and he's a part of the Democratic Party, and we have this border crisis, is it a voting? What is the benefit of why this is going on? Is it just political stance, political views? I don't know.
Well, I think that what it really boils down to is that the Democratic Party of today is not the Democratic Party of like one election cycle ago.
Correct.
There's a fringe element of it. Think kind of the Bernie Sanders left that rose in power with this election and then were put in place over the immigration policy. And their ideology is, borders are so yesterday. We don't do borders, that human rights, that U.S. civil rights apply to the entire world.
Yeah.
You have the right to come here. And detention, deportation, law enforcement is immoral, cruel, and must be ended. It's fascistic, and they say this. And those are the people that got control of the immigration policy, and I think they just want to see it implemented for the first time.
Yeah.
And they literally just broke down the laws, the immigration laws, and stopped following them, all of them.
What I thought was fascinating is during this last governor election when Beto O'Rourke and Abbott were going at each other, I thought it was funny because he had a different opinion about the border security, and it was completely opposite of what Governor Abbott currently has. And I thought it was funny because he plainly outlines that he doesn't believe in a border and he doesn't believe in so forth. But when he was asked, he's got a really tall, nice fence around his home, and
right.
He got a border, so it's don't practice what you preach is what I'm kind of getting at with that. But anyway, not to mix politics into the show, but you can't because it's just it's a horrible crisis, and I think that the terrorists realize what's going on in our country, and they're capitalizing on our political really disagreements right now. Because you are right, we have the political parties we have Democrats, Republicans, and Independents, but right now we have the left wing Democrats, we have the right wing Republicans, we have Republicans. So there's just a huge mixture right now going on, and I think everybody seems to be a united front on major issues. So,
yeah, I'm really upset that my fellow Irishman Francis O'Rourke was brought up in this conversation.
Yeah,
Beto.
That's right, Beto. I'm sorry.
This is a whole different podcast. Maybe he'll come on one day. Shout out Beto O'Rourke. You want to come on and tell your side? We'd love to have you on, buddy.
But I spent a lot of time in Mexico, and Central America with the migrants. The last 2 years, I've just spent huge amounts of time on the ground with them. And I would say every time I go down there, I'll meet some guy named Jose or whatever, whatever his name is, and he speaks perfect English. I'm like, where'd you get your English? Oh, well, I lived in South Carolina for 8 years, which tells me he got in trouble, paid his dues, and got deported. So I always ask, well, what'd you do? That's my first question. I was framed or whatever it is. But the point is why are you going back now? Because whatever you did was bad enough that you got brought to the attention of law enforcement. You probably were convicted. So why are you coming back now? And the answer is because I can get in. They're letting us in. I can run it. And so the problem with this border breakdown, I guess you would call it, one of the big problems that there are a lot of criminals coming back through it. And the administration ended interior deportation. I don't know if you know that, but there is no more deportation happening from the interior. So they know if they get past that 100-mile mark, they're in.
Yep.
And what we're seeing is a lot of recommits, a lot of recidivism happening with those people. Now, if we can catch them, and DPS catches them, we thank God they're getting caught. Some of them are getting caught, but about 1.5 million have not gotten caught. Runners, we call those. And so those runners are going to be a high concentration criminal pool.
Which affects the men and women of law enforcement, and they're no longer a border problem. They're on the street, men and women on the street facing Texas, that.
Yeah. Absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind that there are a lot of criminals that are re-entering the border because it's wide open. The Border Patrol had to pull off most of its men and women from the front line to do processing duty for all the people they're letting in.
We had Chris Cabrera on. I don't know if you were aware of that a while ago. Right now, and was it within the last 2 years, I believe? They lead the national law enforcement agencies in suicides. The men and women of Border Patrol, and I'm not saying that you suggested any different, but they want to do a good job. It's just their hands are tied right now with this administration, and their struggles right now are real. And
they're handcuffed. The horse whipping incident because they had reins on their horses, and they are completely handcuffed.
Yeah, they were unfortunately they're part of they're a segment of law enforcement that was demonized along with everybody else, maybe worse than regular cops. Because they were characterized as Nazi thugs and like something in detention as concentration camps and that sort of thing. For years they got that, and then when this government got into office, you could feel that they were looking at their Border Patrol that way.
Demonized
them. And when that thing happened in Del Rio with the horses, that was a perfect example. They just threw them all under the bus immediately from the top all the way to the top. Yeah. All the way to the top.
Which was crazy because anybody with any experience interacting with horses knew what those long split reins, they're just long split reins.
All you had to do is a Google search on that and you would know. Or, you know what? There were guys that had drones right overhead, and the drone footage was published. Like they didn't touch. Wow. I mean, all anybody had to do is just look at the footage.
Can't let the truth stand in the way of a good story.
Go ahead.
You spent some time in Central America, and my time as a cop, some of the most ruthless, violent gang members I dealt with were not American. They weren't Bloods or Crips. They were from Mexico, Central America.
Salvadorans.
Is that something you've interacted or have some knowledge on?
Yeah. Well, for one thing, the Texas border is mostly, I would say it's like 90% controlled by the cartels. Nobody comes over. Nothing comes through that's worth any money where they don't get their taxed percentage. Yeah, their peso. And in this particular mass migration situation, they are just raking it in. Smuggling was like a side hustle for the cartels for most. Anytime I was with DPS all those years, it's like, yeah, I mean, we'll make some money on it, but we're going to let these ASOs, we called them area, like they were smuggling organization, little locals, coyotes and stuff. They'll handle it and they'll pay us. But this thing is so voluminous, so many millions of people coming over, that they are like directly involved now and have whole divisions dedicated to it. And they, there are whole areas of the border I noticed right away in like March 2021 where they were so swamped they put in place this inventory control system where if you wanted to cross the river, you had to buy, like at a water park, you had to pay your money and then get a wristband. Every single one of them had a wristband, and even the babies had them on their legs.
So they've turned into like travel agency. The cartels is like a travel agency.
Yeah, and well organized.
Or like Six Flags.
Well organized. And they're charging like $2,500 each. So the cartels were just making just. I saw testimony on Capitol Hill from ICE Intel where they said before this started, cartels might have made maybe $500 million a year on human smuggling, but that in the first year they made $13 billion.
Wow.
That first year, and 2022 was way bigger than that first year. 2023 is going to be way bigger than that. So they're just, the money is like, it's, nobody can even imagine the money they're making. They're just, and what do you think they do with that? They're buying weapons.
Yep.
They're buying weapons.
Well, and as the OTMs come over with combat experience from Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, it's my understanding they're teaching the Mexican cartels how to use vehicle-borne IEDs, how to accurately, they're sharing information on how to carry out their craft. And I know there's been some car bombings in Mexico, not to the extent that there has been overseas.
We had to study that over at DPS. That fell to us.
Wow.
So
that's a scary thought when car bombs
they were
start
doing a
coming
lot
here.
of car bombings, and I want to say it was like 2012, 2013, and they're still doing them. And now they're dropping grenades by drone like ISIS did.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Well, and one of the stories I was reviewing is they would take just some crackhead, put him in a police uniform, kill him, put him at the scene next to a vehicle-borne IED, call for the police. Of course, the police are going to come running because they think there's a law enforcement officer injured. Then when all the first responders arrive, they clack off the V-bid. And when that comes to America, that's a game changer. I mean, that's a problem if that starts because it's on our front porch. It just hasn't crossed the threshold to here.
Well, my concern is that, to date, I mean, there are incursions, but they are worried still that we would ask the Mexicans to crack down if they got out of hand, if they crossed too many red lines. But my worry is that they are now so powerful and moneyed that if we did ask the Mexicans to put the smackdown on them, that the Mexicans wouldn't be able to.
Yeah.
It's bigger than them.
In which case, we have no leverage on them. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. That's those guys are a Texas problem. We, at DPS, we had a ton of resources dedicated to that. We had cops, we had informants, we had analyst groups that were dedicated because it's a cross-border thing, what they're involved in, the transnational criminal organizations, TCOs, we call them. We had to stay smart on them all the time because they were doing things. They were killing people over here. They were beheading people. They're doing money laundering. They're having money moving through Texas back south over. And Texas plays a huge role. I don't think people realize how big a role we play.
Yeah.
Texas law enforcement in all kinds of border-related criminal activity, and it's complex stuff, cross-border stuff.
Yeah.
that requires federal agencies and cooperation with even Mexican intelligence.
Wow. Well, man, you actually just published a book that came out recently, Overrun, How Joe Biden Unleashed the Greatest Border Crisis in U.S. History. You've kind of touched on some obviously some border issues. We've just talked about it. Give us some kind of highlights on the book, and then I kind of go into detail on where people can find it. Our viewers, watchers, listeners, and just talk about the book, man.
Right. So the book is just published Tuesday last week.
Oh, wow.
So it's like 1 week fresh.
Timing.
It's on bookstores, shelves. It's out there. It's like on Amazon and anywhere you want to find it. And this is kind of a compilation of all of my reporting for the last 2 years down on the border and beyond it, and trying to explain to people how this thing got started, why it started, why it's continuing, why we can't seem to shut it down. They don't want to shut it down, and what the implications are of it for the country, because this is transformational. The numbers of people coming into the country is just going to change everything, soup to nuts in this country, especially after another 2 years of this. We should have somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 8 to 10 million new people in the country, and most of them are going to be low education, low skilled, non-English speaking peoples that need help, that need support.
Significant.
And there's going to be I write extensively about this, there is going to be a criminal problem. We're already seeing it everywhere.
Yep.
And not like normal crime. Horrendous, horrific, little girls tied to the bed kind of stuff. I'm not saying that it's just all of them are criminals. I'm just saying that we have a lot of people who have re-entered the country
That are dangerous.
who are dangerous.
Because the floodgates are open.
Because the floodgates are open, and we're not deporting. We're not deporting the criminals. We won't deport the criminals. And one of the highlights of the book, I think, is where, I'm kind of talking about the agency ICE and how it has been handcuffed, the ERO, detention and removal guys. Were systematically handcuffed. They are not allowed to arrest even criminal aliens with removal orders on them. In most of the country, when law enforcement has one of these guys in jail, they won't let them contact ICE afterwards to say, come get them. They're getting out Tuesday. This guy's got a detainer. Come get them. All that's off the
I was shocked to hear. I learned probably 2 months ago that I worked in the jail when I was a kid, and if I got somebody that came in, had no information, no ID, clearly spoke no English, every indication was that they were here illegally, I had a number I'd call ICE. The guy would be like, cool, I'll be by in a little bit, or I'll be by in the morning.
That's right.
He'd go back there. He'd come back and go, put a detainer on him. I'll as soon as he bonds out, I'll take him. Somebody told me
That's over.
That is completely.
That's completely.
And so I
over.
said, even if I know without a doubt he's here illegally, he's like, you can't call and they won't come.
That's right.
That's insane.
Exactly right. So that's just one part of a really broad rainbow of operations that no longer happen between ICE and the police. So
let's just call it what it is. It's just failed protection. I mean, that's what it is.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's a theme. You're saying that ICE is handcuffed. Chris told us they're completely handcuffed.
Right.
It's a theme.
Mayors and DAs and people at cities, officials in cities just shut it down too. You will not in Democratic Austin, for example. Good luck if you're in the Travis County Sheriff Department and you've got a real bad guy coming out of jail. Don't even bother. They're not going to come pick him up.
Wow.
And a lot of times, those folks come out of jail and they go right into a crime, from jail to crime right away. And so that kind of thing is what I'm talking about when I say transformational in law, for law and order in the United States. It's going to change. You're going to start seeing this. You already are. Really weird crime. I mean, like foreign kind of crime,
Yeah.
So the other thing about the book is, it's got a full-throated chapter about what Texas has been doing down on the border.
Oh, good.
Whether it's to the benefit, whether it worked or not. I reported it, and I've been down there, and I know DPS. I was there for all of the years of Operation Strong Safety. My analysts were constantly having to rotate down there, and we were focused on the border back during that time. And they're doing the same thing now, but in like quadruple the money, quadruple the manpower. And the chapter really discusses Operation Lone Star, and I'm a fan of Operation. I'll just tell you, I like Operation Lone Star. I've been there on the front lines. I'm with the guys on the ground, and the program does something really important. One of the things, and people criticize it. If you read the media, my colleagues, my former colleagues, they're just pillorying this thing, this program, left and right. Oh, they're not. It's not what they say it is. They're tormenting these poor immigrants. But what happened in this mass migration crisis is that the administration invited most nationalities to cross and give up. And then if you give up, we're going to put you on a bus in a day or two with a paper and you're free. Well, that requires administrative duty. Mm-hmm. So they brought all the Border Patrol off the line. Let's say 3,000 people cross at some spot in Eagle Pass or whatever. Well, they got to bring in every Border Patrol agent for 100 miles to deal with this for 2 days. That means there's nobody on the line. That means that those criminal aliens I was telling you about, the guys that speak perfect English because they lived in South Carolina for 8 years, are coming in. That means that the drug cartels are moving dope. That means they're moving guns, they're bringing money. It's just wide open. It's the Wild West there. The beauty of Operation Lone Star is it puts somebody there. Somebody's there.
Yeah, deterrent,
and they're picking up loads. They're hauling. They're chasing guys. They're moving. They're arresting criminal aliens that would have gotten through otherwise. Mm-hmm. They give those to Border Patrol and they kick them back. So they're doing something really important, in my opinion. Now, did Greg Abbott do everything great? Some of the programs some of the things he's done and said just seem like they're kind of empty. They're kind of stunty, putting migrants on buses and shipping. It was funny for some of us, but
it got some folks' attention.
It got attention. Yep. It was political theater, but it didn't really do much.
So let me ask you this. The floodgates are wide open. Chris used an analogy when he was on the other day. If your sink is leaking, you don't just keep bailing water with a Dixie cup. You turn the water off, you fix the issue, and then you turn the water back on. Otherwise, you're just going to bail water with a Dixie cup for the rest of your life. The floodgates are wide open. How do we walk this back? Can you walk it back? And what's Todd's opinion of the controversial wall?
Okay, remind me about that. But this can be walked back overnight. This is not complex policy stuff. It works like this, and I know this from interviewing probably 500 immigrants. And I didn't count them, but I mean, had to be at least 500 just for this book. And so what drives their decisions to move on the border is if they know they're going to get in and that they're going to get to stay in, once they're in, they'll drop 10 grand on smuggling, right? So what the Biden administration did is they put policies in place that guaranteed that their money was going to pay off and that they were going to get in and be able to pay that back, and then multiples.
So the risk is low. They pay their money, they're going to get in.
It's like it's all about a gamble calculus. And what they did was they just made these exemptions, carved exemptions in Title 42, which was this pushback for the pandemic, pushback policies. And they said all of these nationalities get in. These ones don't. All of these demographics of people get in, right? So everybody in the world who fit those nationalities and demographics poured in and spent the money. They laid their bet on the felt, and they had a 99% chance of getting the payoff, right? So to turn that back around is you put policies in place that make their $10,000 a loss. You don't get a payoff. You're not even going to bother leaving home.
That's why I don't go to Vegas.
That's right. This is a Vegas lesson. But it's a human, I mean, this is basic human behavior, right?
Risk reward.
Yeah. I mean, if you get a policing offer from, someplace in Chicago, you're going to sit down and you're going to go, if I do this, will I make more money over time? Will my retirement be better? Will my life be better? All those things. That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
And what they don't want to do is end up stuck in Mexico with a debt to maybe bad guys. So it's really that simple. And there are policies that Trump had in place that did that.
Yep.
They were removed immediately, put them back in, and reduce the odds that you're going to get a return on that investment, and it's over. It's literally over.
Yeah. Got to read the fine print.
Yeah.
Well, and you said that you can get these on Amazon and in bookstores?
Yeah, the book, I haven't been to a bookstore yet. I was going to go over to the one here in Austin and see if it's on the shelf.
That'd be cool to walk in and see your own book that you wrote.
I haven't seen it yet.
I mean, I'll never get to experience that. There's no doubt about it. Clint?
Todd's thoughts on the wall before we leave that.
On the wall. I was there the day construction stopped. I have a whole chapter on that. I was in the middle of New Mexico, and I found the spot. And, I was there watching, and they were packing up all the stuff and, driving away. And, I interviewed a lot of Border Patrol guys. Everywhere I went on that trip, I was like, hey, how's this wall helping you? And in my opinion, the greatest experts on walls in the world are United States Border Patrol agents who work on the wall. They put their 40s in every week on the wall. Like, who else would you ask? Why would you bother to ask anyone else whether the walls work?
Yep.
Some liberal guy in
Iowa,
upstate New York.
Some guy in Iowa probably knows a lot about the wall on the wall.
Yeah.
And so here's how they explain it. They're like, well, where there are walls, all that pedestrian traffic won't go there. They'll look for a gap, and they'll go to the gap and cross through. Of course, when they ended construction, there were gaps everywhere. I remember flying in a DPS chopper over the border, doing a thing, and you could just see it look like shark teeth all the way for miles and miles, gaps everywhere. And so they moved to the gaps. When there are continuous walls, the only people that cross are Olympiad, athletes in the drug trade who are,
pole vaulters.
Yeah, they'll be showing you those video of the guys coming up, and they're like these young 22-year-old dudes that are just like strong as, normal people don't do that. That's 30 feet up. You're going to die. You're scared. I mean, I'm not going up that wall, man. No way.
Yeah.
Unless I'm going to make about 20 grand on a drug deal, then I might think about it, or they're cutting through it. So the walls slow everything down.
Yeah.
And they deter the vast majority of people from crossing in. They're like, I'm going to get stuck behind that wall and I can't cross it. Yeah. and I think they work. And the Border Patrol loves them. If the Border Patrol loves Wall, and they're spending $40 down there every week, I love them.
Yeah.
Well, if a wall's good for the White House and
that's right,
many other places, I would assume the wall is a great deterrent and obstacle.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
it is.
Well, brother, I can't thank you enough for coming on. It's been interesting. Looking forward to reading your book. What an accomplishment. Is this your first book to publish?
It's my second book. First one it's called America's Covert Border War.
Okay.
And it's all about those jihadis coming in.
That's cool.
And by the way, in this border crisis, they started keeping track of the guys that are crossing that they catch who are on the FBI's watch list, terrorism watch list, 98 in 2022. And so far this year, 51.
Oh, wow.
They're crossing in.
I'm sure they were headed to California to pick strawberries.
Yeah. That's what it is.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you want to do the quick, rapid questions?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
First,
and listen, I know you weren't a road troop for DPS, but I've got faith that you'll answer this in my favor.
I don't know.
In my favor.
best or your favorite cop movie or line from a cop movie?
Oh, man, I'm not prepared for this.
It's off the cuff. It's not a pass or fail. Every answer's right.
I'm a blank on that. I'm going to be terrible at this game.
Okay, we can circle back to it.
Favorite car, favorite model of car, or
Cop
DPS issue, or any car, best car you've had.
God, I had a Ram, Dodge Ram pickup right now. It's got buku horsepower in it. I love that thing. So that's my favorite one right now.
Gotcha.
Ram Rebel.
Ram Rebel.
But I'm kind of partial to the Broncos, for those new Broncos.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
I like
the
the old
Sasquatch
ones.
package.
Yeah,
I like
good.
those.
In Todd's drink, adult refreshment, or if you don't drink alcohol, your favorite go-to relax drink.
Nah, man, I'm a Blue Moon beer guy.
Blue Moon.
Good.
I like that stuff.
Hadn't had one in a long time.
Slice of orange or no slice?
Slice of orange is
Heck
good.
yes.
Yeah, Shock. Have you had Shock Top?
I don't think so.
Shock Top's very similar, but yeah,
That's
very,
really
very, very good beer. First Blue Mooner we've had.
Y'all check out Overrun. Todd Bensman. And the first book is
America's Covert Border War.
America's. That one sounds really good
Yeah,
too.
that's a good one. It's relevant because these jihadis are still coming across. I just was in Tijuana a few months ago, and I went there to investigate a Muslim-only immigrant shelter 2 blocks from the wall. And I wrote a big, huge piece on that, on the national security implications of it. I met all these Chechens outside. I interviewed all these Chechens.
in Tijuana.
Oh, yeah, tons of them. Tajikistanis, Afghans, Syrians, and they're all going to this place, and nobody cares. The lady who runs the place, I asked, has anybody from American intelligence ever approached you and asked you anything? And they're like, no.
Which is really sad. The entire culture has changed along the border, because when I grew up, I had friends and family along the border that you would go across for the day and eat dinner and goof off and go shopping. I was in the Marines, and I heard Marines back in the day used to go to Tijuana, and there's not an environment anymore where anyone should feel comfortable running across to grab dinner or go shopping, which is really sad because I'm 50, and so it wasn't all that long ago where it was a really cross-border environment that was completely safe, and it's just not a great environment. It's really sad.
Yeah, I got to stop doing that.
Well, again, man, we appreciate you coming on. I'm looking forward to reading the book. Is it on the audiobooks, or is it on?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Maybe me and Clint can do that for
Got
you.
to do it the old-fashioned way.
Oh, well, you got anything else, Clint?
Nope. Hit subscribe, shoot us an email, Blue Grit Podcast
Absolutely.
at
Tmpa.org.
tmpa.org. Give us feedback, hit subscribe, comment. If you got ideas for a guest on here, we'd love to hear it.
Absolutely.
Todd, cannot thank you enough for
Thank
coming
you.
on and sharing with us.
Yeah, happy to support what you guys are doing, and keep on keeping on.
Appreciate you, man.
Check out Overrun.
Go Blue.
God bless you guys. Stay safe. And as always, may God bless Texas. We're out.